Today, I'm going to go a little bit woo-woo on you, and I'm going to talk about manifesting. I have manifested some pretty cool things in the last 2 years, partly because I have been studying the art of manifesting. And today I want to share with you some of my observations that I have made about what all of these cool things that I've created have in common. How did I get there? And maybe you can learn and use them as you build your own dream. Let's get started.
Hey there, this is Corinna Bench, and welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast. In today's market, it's not enough to just grow your product. You've got to know how to sell it too. Welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast, where we reveal online marketing strategies and tips to help farmers like you get better and more confident at marketing. Learn how to find more customers, increase your sales, and build a strong brand for your farm. Let's start the show.
Well, welcome to episode 245 of the My Digital Farmer podcast. I'm your host, Corinna Bench, one of the farmers at Shared Legacy Farms out in Elmer, Ohio. I'm also the founder of mydigitalfarmer.com, which is all about trying to help other farmers get more confident and savvy in your marketing and sales strategy so that you can grow a profitable business. How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the show. Big shout out to all of my big fans and all of my binge listeners. If you're new to the podcast, really glad you're here today. I hope you enjoy it. Make sure that you subscribe to the show and go check out some of my back episodes. I always point people to the first 10 to get started, especially if you're looking for a basic walkthrough of the fundamentals of farm marketing. You can also get onto my email list. That is a fabulous way to get kind of a crash course in how farm marketing works, because I'll drip out to you about every 5 days another email that's curated, that walks you through step by step the stuff you need to know, the people you need to know, the principles, the tools you need to build first. And it's really good. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from farmers who get on that email list. So you can get subscribed to that by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. Today's podcast is sponsored by Farm Marketing School. This is my monthly membership where farmers can come in and build marketing assets one at a time in special 30-day build projects that I've created for you. Right now, there are like 8 projects inside of Farm Marketing School, and every month a new one gets added, and you basically subscribe for 30 days, or you can stay in for a couple months or 3 months. You can stay in the whole year. But what you're doing is you go inside and you decide, this is the project that I want to work on. You take the class, the workshop class that's recorded, you just watch it, and then you build it yourself. So this is the DIY version of Accelerator. There's no coaching element or mastermind or Zoom meetups. It's just you going in there, watching the class that the accelerators saw live with me, and then working on it on your own. So if you're a DIY type of person and you think you can do it yourself, this is an amazing resource. There are projects in there for how to build a promotion plan, how to build your email nurture sequence, how to write a great weekly email, how to build the website homepage messaging, what goes on that homepage, how to build a lead magnet, and more. So if you want to see what's in the Farm Marketing School, you can head to mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS. And I encourage you to subscribe for 1 month. Check it out. I have a whole onboarding, like a crash course in marketing, that I encourage you to take in your first week. There's an assessment inside of there that's going to help you know which elements you should build first. It's so good, and I would love it if you would give it a shot for a month. Let me know what you think, and if you decide you like it, you can stay in there for several months in the off season and get a ton of your marketing stuff done. I am really excited about today's topic, and I actually came upon it very suddenly. I have this folder on my desk here that's called podcast, and inside of it there are all kinds of ideas for podcast topics. Sometimes I've actually gone through the process of writing out notes for an actual podcast when I had some extra time somewhere, and I stuff it into this folder because it just doesn't feel like the right time to present that topic. And as I was paging through it, because I was trying to figure out what should I talk about this week, I saw a paper that was a photocopy from my journal. about the process of manifesting things. And I don't know when I wrote this journal. The date isn't on there, but I obviously felt really inspired after I wrote that. I must have been like, wow, this was so good. This is something that I need to share eventually with other people, because I photocopied the journal page. I don't ever do that. And I must have tucked it into this folder. And as I was kind of reading through the principles that I was writing about in here, I thought, yeah, man, this is the time of year that I need to talk about this with you guys. And this feels easy. This feels like an easy lift to riff off of this for a little bit with you. So the word manifesting is a little bit of a buzzword in my house. If my two boys were here, they would roll their eyes, because I'm always challenging them to go and manifest their dreams. They'll talk about how they want to get something or they want to do something cool. And I'll say, okay, well, what do you have to do to manifest that? And because I have been on this 2-year journey of my own, trying to do some pretty awesome things in my life and pivot how I'm spending my time and trying to take on new beliefs, challenging some of my limiting beliefs, I've been studying the art of manifesting. I've actually been listening to people who teach how to manifest. And I've just been intrigued by this whole concept of how do you make big, audacious goals come to pass? What is the strategy? Is there a strategy? What do you have to do? How do you have to change? What kind of person do you have to be in order to make your dreams come true? And I've definitely become a believer in the power of mindset, how important it is to coach your mindset, to watch your mind, to study your thoughts, to change your thoughts, and that a lot of what I end up creating in the world is the result of what I'm thinking. So I wanted to spend an episode just talking about this today. This isn't normally what I talk about, right? Like I usually focus a lot on marketing and sales strategies. However, I do feel like this has its place on the show, because the more I'm working with my own coach, the more I'm realizing that the things that hold me back from selling, from achieving my sales goals, often are related to what's going on in my head, what I'm thinking, what my mindset's like. And so there is some lessons I think here to be learned. So today on the podcast, I'm going to start out by sharing a few examples of things that I have actually manifested in my life that, looking back on them now, are pretty awesome in my opinion, and were big projects. Felt a little bit audacious, almost impossible. There were a few times where I almost gave up on myself, but I pushed through and they ended up happening, and I'm really glad that I did. And I'm hoping that I can tease out what have been some of the lessons that I learned from pursuing those goals. What have been some of the common denominators? Because I have a feeling that they'll be similar in your own story. And what I want you to do before I share some of my different examples here, I want you to, first of all, think of an example in your life where you manifested something pretty cool. Maybe it was an experience. Maybe it was some kind of a big win or an achievement. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a piece of equipment, a tool of some sort. Maybe it was a learning, a mindset shift for you. Maybe it was a big investment of some sort. I want you to just picture whatever's coming up for you. What was the thing? And have that in your mind as I'm going through this episode today, because I'm wondering if some of the principles that I'm going to share will be similar to what you experienced that got you to your manifestation. The other thing I want you to think about right now before I get started is I want you to imagine, what is your current big audacious goal? What is something that feels impossible right now? You're looking across to the horizon line and it feels so far away, but it's something you deeply want and you have fixed your eye on it and you're going after it. and you want to manifest it. You want it to happen. You want it to come to be. And so I want you to picture that thing too. And I hope you have a big, audacious goal. It's important for us to give focus to our day, to our week. What are we going after? What are we trying to become? What are we chasing? Hopefully you have a little bit of clarity about that. And I think that there are some patterns in the people who achieve great things. I think if we studied them all, put them all into a room, we would find some common denominators. And so I'm hoping that today you'll be inspired. You'll hear some of my examples, and I'm going to tease out some of my lessons that I've learned from them. And hopefully you'll listen and you'll be like, yeah, man, that's something that I've experienced. Or, oh, I can apply that to the thing that I'm currently trying to manifest. Okay, so the only notes that I have in front of me is this photocopy of my journal. And I must have been reflecting on the process of manifestation and trying to figure out what are the common threads. Because I started out the entry by writing, I manifested, and then I had 5 different examples of things that, in my opinion, were big deals. Things that I actively worked on, that felt difficult, that felt impossible at one point, and I pulled them off. Okay, so I'm going to share them somewhat briefly with you and try and give you a little bit of context for each of them. And then I'm going to tease out what the principles were. So the first one that I wrote down, and this one's kind of telling, I wrote down Kurt falling for me with a big smiley face. Now, if you don't know who Kurt is and you've just started listening to the show, Kurt is my husband. We've been married for 16 years. And I deeply believe that I manifested Kurt falling in love with me. Our story of how we met and how we dated is such a good one. I don't have time to go into it here, but let's just say we dated for a long time, and I had to woo this man and convince him that I was someone that he should date. Now, when we first met, I actually wasn't interested in him. We were friends for probably 1.5 years. And then there was a point, actually on my 30th birthday, he was at my party at the bar and he sang karaoke. And it was while he was singing karaoke that I looked at him and I was like, he is so fun. He is really cute. I think I could date him. And at that point, everything switched and I suddenly turned like into this predator on the prowl. And for the next 3 years, I had like a strategy to slowly reel him in. And it took a long time to actually get him to ask me to marry him. In fact, there's a funny story in our family about how he invited our parents to Chicago, and he actually asked for the hand in marriage from my dad, took him out to eat. I knew this had happened because my parents told me later. And then even after that moment, it took him, I want to say it was like 7 months until he finally asked me. And my parents called me every single weekend and were like, has he done it yet? Has he asked you yet? And I had to keep saying, no, Mom, no, he hasn't. Okay, so I persevered through a really long time, but I really loved him and I thought he was amazing, and I saw the potential for him and for us and how I could help him and serve him and how he could help and serve me, all that stuff, right? So chasing after my husband and actually getting him to want to be with me, after 3 or 4 years, I think it was 4 years, the courtship went on, like that felt like a huge achievement. And there were moments where I wasn't sure it was going to work out, where I was like, all this time that I've sunk into this better work out. So that was kind of the very first thing that I thought of, because I was very active in the process of procuring him as my husband. I wouldn't say that he pursued me initially. I mean, there definitely was a point when that flipped, don't get me wrong. But if I hadn't persisted, that wouldn't have happened. The second example that I thought of was actually homeschooling my children. When COVID happened and the school system kind of fell apart, I had this sense, this calling really on my life where I'm like, I feel like I need to bring them back into the home because I think that I could probably do a better job of teaching them than what the school system is trying to do right now. They were really I mean, I used to sit on the school board. I was school board president, so I'm a big believer in public education. Don't get me wrong. But the school systems were asked to do a lot. That was a big pivot, and they were trying to just figure out. And there was a good probably 5 or 6 months there where, the quality of the education was definitely not what it had normally been. So I wanted to pull them back into my home, and I felt like I should give this a shot. And yet there were so many hurdles to figuring that process out. Like, how does that even work? How do you do that legally? What the heck do I teach them? Do I have the ability to teach them? What if I do it wrong? I had a lot of social pressure not to do it. My family, even Kurt was reluctant at first. Now he's like, oh my gosh, you've taught them more than the school system did in those 2 years. But my extended family, I could tell they were trying to look supportive, but I could sense that they were worried about all of those like social questions that come up, like, are your kids going to be messed up? They're not going to know how to hang out with people, all of that. And then just my own imposter syndrome, like, I'm not formally, like, I'm not qualified. Am I qualified as a teacher? Am I going to be able to teach the math and the science? Is it going to be interesting? Am I as good as what they're doing at the school? I don't have the credentials, all that stuff, right? But again, I just sort of decided I was going to do it, and I figured it out along the way. And I have to say, like, I homeschooled Josiah for 2 years. I actually feel like because of those 2 years, my children are now set up for success. I feel like I actually did a little bit of, I had to catch up my oldest son in math, which I did. I taught him about 2 years of math in 1 year and got him back to where he needed to be and brought his confidence back. And I'm not sure that the school district would have been able to do that if we had, proceeded. And my other son is now super accelerated as a huge reader. It knows how to like manage his own time and do his own work at his own pace. I think, again, partly because of that experience. So I'm very proud of those 2 years. I think they were an amazing experience for both of them. I'm really close to my boys as a result. All these benefits came out of it, right? But it was a huge thing that I had to pull off. So that was something else that I wrote down. I have 3 more, so stay with me. And maybe this is fun for you to like learn a little bit about my backstory. Getting Jed into aviation school is another really big one. And he's now a sophomore at this school. It's called ANSAT. It's in Toledo. It's almost like a magnet school in the Toledo public school system. And it's a tech school, so he is literally learning how to become an airplane mechanic. And by the time he graduates, he will be able to take his official test and be a certified like mechanic and work on airplanes, which is pretty awesome. This is something that is normally very expensive and takes a long time once you graduate from high school. So getting into this school, when he first expressed interest in it, I almost didn't pursue it because I felt like there's no way he's going to get in. We were coming out of homeschooling, so I was not sure that he would even be considered, because I know that the rigor and the standards are high for that school. And I was like, well, I don't know if he's going to be good enough. I don't know what if my year with him in homeschool is actually going to be a negative. And I also, again, just didn't understand how the process worked. It was new territory. And so I almost didn't pursue it because I thought it was going to be impossible and so hard. But we decided we were going to go for it. And if I hadn't pursued it, if I hadn't pushed through the wall and figured it out, it wouldn't have happened. And here we are, 2 years into it. I would say he's probably the second one, maybe the top or second person in his class. Like, he's so obviously made for this. He's very gifted. He's passionate about it. He's going to do well. He's curious, so he follows his curiosity. He's a natural. So I take credit. I always joke about this. Like, I take credit for manifesting this huge life decision for my son. I mean, he made the decision. All right. But I really helped him figure out how to get into that school. And I was actively promoting it. Right. So that was another example. Hopefully this is helping you think of examples that for your own life. Okay. And then a couple more, like one of them is when I did within Digital Farmer, when I decided that I wanted to pivot and start talking more about farm marketing in general and less about CSA specifically. And I had this idea of having a group coaching program, which you've heard me talk about it. It's called Accelerator. And then more recently, Farm Marketing School, which has been another pivot in my business where I've sort of created a school, an online school for farmers to come in and learn how to build the assets, the marketing assets for their business and build a marketing machine. But that moment in time felt really scary. I'm like, is anyone even going to listen to me? Am I good enough? Can I pull this off? This is going to be a long play. Will people want to be coached by me? Will I be effective? Will I bring value to them? Am I good at this? Like all of those things were pushing against me, and I put it off for a long time. And then I finally just said, I'm going to go for it. Even if nobody's interested and they laugh me out of the building, I'm going to go for it. And so that decision to run Accelerator, and I had to actually actively pursue my first clients. I reached out to people and handpicked many of them and said, I think you would be great. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try. So that was another example of something that, looking back, felt like a huge hurdle. And now, of course, I'm on the other side and it's awesome and I love it. Starting Farm Marketing School also felt equally scary and daunting. Now I'm on the other side and it's going awesome. So those are examples of big goals that I manifested. And then the final one that I'm going to mention, which is really powerful to me, may not sound like a big deal to you, but this is fairly recent. I have started a very small group. I'm calling it it's called the Mastermind Trio. That's what I write on my planner whenever we meet. But you ladies know who you are. There's two of you that I have brought together into a special kind of cohort, and we just get together. This is a free mastermind. It's just a group of women that I have invited to meet with me to grow and develop ourselves and study together and push each other to become a better version of ourselves. And asking those women into the room was really scary. Again, wasn't sure if people would be interested. They were like big deals to me. And the fact that they have been so awesome and we are building our friendship and learning from each other is just amazing. And so I'm so excited about where that is going to go as well. So that's kind of a list of some of the things that I had put down on this piece of paper, on this journaling entry. And then I wrote common traits of the manifesting process. Okay. And so this is where I want to now kind of share what I wrote down in this journal and what I noticed. And hopefully as I go through these, maybe some of them are going to jump out at you as things you recognize in your own self as you were chasing after that huge thing that you manifested. And I want to hopefully remind you that maybe this is the thing you need to activate if you want to get to the horizon line that you set for yourself now. Okay, so here we go. The first thing that I wrote down, common traits of the manifesting process. I wrote down, I put my intention on these things. And I underlined the word intention. I shifted. My mind was fixated on these things. And when you fixate on them, you are where your attention is, right? So when you put your attention on something, I wrote this, I did stuff to move toward the goal. I wrote it down. I turned it into a project with steps, and I wrote it down every single day. Now, I didn't do that for Kurt, for getting Kurt to fall for me, because I wasn't journaling back then. But I did put my intention on how do I get him to fall for me. And I had like a strategy, like I would think through, like during the week, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make him a casserole and I'm going to bring it to his house. So he's going to learn that I'm a really good cook, right? Like this sounds really silly and you're laughing, but like even with that, there was a intention there and I was doing stuff, right? I didn't just say I want this thing, but I created a list Like, what would be the first step that I need to do to take action to get a little bit closer to that goal? And then I would do it. And so in all of those cases, Jed getting into aviation school, the boys being homeschooled, the accelerator pivot, the mastermind creation, like I was writing that stuff down in my journal as if they had already happened. I have a section in my journal every day where I write down the future is now. And I write down these things that I'm currently trying to manifest, and I write them in the present tense as if they have already occurred, right? So it keeps it in front of me. And then I have I work with my own life coach with Rebecca, and every week in my check-in sheet, there's a section in there where I have to write out the different projects, and I have to tell her, like, what's the milestone? What's the milestone I'm aiming for on this project? What's been the success and the progress that I've hit so far? And so I have like a project plan for many of these things to actively get there. So I just want to ask you, is that resonating as you think about the things that you went after? Did you take action? Were there baby steps of action once you fixated and put your intention on it? And it was like, you thought about it all the time. It was constantly on your radar, because what you think about most of the time is what you end up creating. And that can be good or that can be bad. So if you have a negative mindset about things, you're probably continuing to create that negative mindset, because that is how you're thinking about it. And so your actions are going to follow what you think. So just ponder that, okay? That's sort of step one. The second thing I wrote down, common traits of the manifesting process. Okay, the second thing I wrote down here is I believed they would happen. And then I wrote, there was a knowing and a deep conviction. This is something, when you study manifesting, this is something that gets talked about. How deeply do you actually believe in your ability to get there? And in every single one of these cases that I shared with you, I knew it was just a matter of time. And maybe that's what helped me. I wasn't especially concerned about, it has to happen in the next 6 months. It was just do I believe that I can get to this, in the next 5 years? Absolutely. Like, that felt completely doable. And I think that gave me confidence. It made me show up with a different mindset. It gave me this sense of power that I will definitely get there and that I will know how to figure it out. I think there's something to be said for being committed in our minds, right? Like, our level of commitment will determine our success. And when you feel really committed to something, you remove all the other options, right? I mean, there's this sense of, I'm going to do this regardless of what happens. I'm going to take action no matter how much failure comes my way, no matter how much failure is required to get there, I'm going to do it. And maybe that was something that kind of goes along with this point, is that I deeply believed I would get there. I knew that there would be struggles that would come up, but I was willing to figure them out one by one. Nothing was going to stop me. And even if it took a lot longer, I was willing to push through the wall and figure out how to get there. So, when you're dealing with a big, massive, audacious goal, you need to know that even though you have that desire, you're also going to experience doubts. You're also going to experience failures, and there's going to be mishaps, and there's going to be stumbling blocks. That's just going to happen. And you have to be willing to stay committed and believe, even when those doubts creep in, even when your desire wanes, right? So I just want you to think about, like, do you deeply believe? I sometimes ask this when I'm talking to my coaching clients and they're talking through an issue or a problem, and I'll just kind of say, whoa, let's just back up for a second. Do you believe that you're going to get there? Do you believe you're going to get to the point where your business is going to completely move to, shipping your product nationally everywhere? Like, are you eventually going to figure that out? And they'll be like, oh yeah, absolutely I will. Okay, well, great. Then you're already there. Like, I can confidently say you've got this. If you believe that it's going to happen and you know you're going to figure it out and you have confidence in yourself, then that is truly more than half the battle. So ask yourself that question as you're thinking about what you have accomplished in the past. Did you deeply believe? Was there a knowing and a conviction that you would get there? Because I think that's important. And how can you get to that place with this new goal? And one suggestion I might offer here for you is if you take off the pressure of time. If you say, I don't need to get there in the next 6 months or 8 months or even year. But if I can get there in 3 years, 4 years, do I feel confident that that can happen? Then that might be all you require to kind of get to that place mentally. Okay, so that was the second point. Third point, there was a decisive moment in the project, in the process, where I took action that started things in motion. And sometimes it was imperfect action, or it was, oh gosh, I don't know what happens after this first step, but I'm just going to take the first step. I'm thinking especially about homeschooling comes to mind, where the first step was to actually unenroll them from the school. And so I didn't know how to do that. And I ended up calling my friends who I knew were homeschoolers. And I just said, what do I do? How do I make this happen? I just need to pull them out of the school. And they sent me the form and I filled it out. And they told me exactly, they sent me to a Facebook group as well. And I started reading some of the stuff in there. And I followed the instructions. And 2 days later, my kids were unenrolled from the school. And that was sort of step one. And then I was like, oh crap, what do I do now? And then I'm like, I have to figure out what to teach them. And so I, again, asked around, what do you teach them? How did you figure this out? And I was told, get this book. So I got this book and I read it in like 3 days, right? There were all these different steps, but the point is that I took, there was a decisive moment where I had to begin the process, where I said, okay, I'm doing this. And I burned the ships in the harbor and took that first step. I want to ask you, is that as you look back at things that you created, or as you look forward at the thing you want to build and that you want to manifest, where is that speaking to you right now? Have you started taking action on it? Because we can sit there and plan and think about doing it for a long time, but you're not going to make any progress until you burn the ships, until you finally take the first step. Because usually inertia is what's holding us back, right? Just the tendency that we have to stay out of motion, to stay at rest. And if you can just get going, stop thinking about how there might be 20 steps ahead of you. Just take the first one, unlock yourself, and do that thing. And you may find that it's not as hard as you thought it was. In fact, here's a funny story. This just happened yesterday or a couple days ago. I have been wanting to move my podcasts for a long time onto YouTube, because YouTube is a huge search engine, and I know a lot of farmers go onto YouTube. And for the longest time, I've been like, I should put my YouTube, my podcasts onto the YouTube channel. But I had told myself, I thought that was going to be a huge project, because this is an audio file and YouTube is a video format. And so in order to get it into video, you got to turn these audio files into video files. And I don't have video with podcast, right? It's just, so I have to just put a picture. Anyway, it's a whole process. I thought it was, at least. I thought I was going to have to do each individual podcast, turn it into a video, then upload it and do all these things. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a massive time expense and money expense to make this happen. And I didn't know where to begin. It has been on my list for 2 years to work on this. And every week I keep adding more and more podcasts to the podcast list, right? The list of podcasts to transfer was getting bigger and bigger. And it was one of my big projects for this year to just finally tackle and hire someone if I had to. Well, guess what? When I went and actually took the first step, that decisive moment where I make an action that started things in motion, I discovered that it wasn't actually that hard. And there was this button, this magic button inside of YouTube Studio that was like, pull from the RSS feed. And it just started pulling all of them over and turning them into videos automatically. And I'm like, what? Oh my God, what is happening? And I was like blown away. So I guess I could put that on my list. I manifested this amazing project of turning all my podcasts into YouTube videos. So they're now on my Digital Farmers YouTube channel. Share them with your friends. But that is an example of like, I just did this huge thing. And the way I manifested it was by taking the first decisive step. So what does that look like for you? How is that speaking to you today? As you look ahead at your big thing you want to make happen, maybe you just need to take the first step. Don't think about what else might be behind it. You can always change your mind, right? If it gets too big later, I guess you could change your mind, but just don't think about that. Just do the thing you can do right now, and the rest will fall into place. Okay, let's move on to the next point I want to make, common traits of the manifesting process. This one's big. There was fear. There was fear in every single one of those projects. A fear that I would fail, a fear that it would be hard, fear that it wouldn't work out. And maybe along with fear, there were hurdles to overcome. There were difficulties, roadblocks. It wasn't easy, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. I would encounter a question that needed to be answered in order for me to move forward, or I'd have to do something that took a lot of time and effort, or I had to figure out how to do something so that I could get to the next step. Sometimes the obstacle or the fear was just all in my mind. It was just like, oh, I'm afraid if I ask them to join this mastermind, they'll say no, and I'll feel small, and I'll feel like I wasn't good enough. And I just had to overcome that and be like, who cares? I'm going for it. Or I don't want to make a mistake and get my kids' schooling wrong and like screw them up for life. So I'm not even going to move forward with this. And I guess my point is that whenever you're manifesting something big, there are always going to be roadblocks that come in the way. There are always going to be moments of fear and doubt. And I think that those wax and wane. You can't expect them not to show up. So if you're doing something big and you're facing an issue right now, you are in the right place. Like that is what is required to ascend to the next level. You have to master that fear. You have to overcome that hurdle, learn the thing you're supposed to learn at that point to be able to progress. I don't think any big accomplishments come unless we deal with fear. So if you are currently chasing after something big and you're in that place and you're not moving forward because you're scared or you're doubting or you're not sure what's going to be on the other side, you're not sure if it's worth the risk, and you're waiting for that to go away, I'm here to tell you it's not going to go away. And maybe that is the thing that you are supposed to deal with, the thing that you are supposed to learn and master in order for you to get to that promised land. So we're in good company. All of us who are chasing big, audacious goals, you will feel fear. And guess what? When you get to the other side and you accomplish that awesome goal, then there's more fear and problems on the side of that. There's just, the problems don't go away. They're just different problems. So stop thinking that we're chasing after an existence that doesn't have problems. I think that they're just part of creation. And this is the challenge when we go after our goals and our dreams and our desires, that we have to stay the course. And it's sort of this question of, are you going to be able to stay resilient, right? Are you going to stay committed? It's going to be uncomfortable. And you have to stay on no matter what, no matter how much you fail, No matter how many mishaps you hit, it is par for the course. All right. So the next tip I want to share here, or observation, is that discipline was required to stay focused. I feel like I've already kind of talked about that a little bit. It sort of meshes with everything I've just said. But along the way, when you're trying to manifest something important to you, something that's compelling, as you face doubt, as you face fears, as your desire wanes and waxes and wanes, as you question yourself, you will be tempted to quit. You will be tempted to not move forward. And all of these big things happen because I pushed through that feeling of wanting to quit. I stayed disciplined. I stayed resilient. I stayed focused on the job that was required, that was immediately in front of me. I didn't always think about what I was going to have to do 5 steps later, but I was thinking about the thing in front of me, mastering that, getting over that hurdle, and then getting a little bit closer to where I wanted to go. So much of this is like mastering your mind, right? Just choosing to stay committed in spite of what comes at you. And then the last thing I wrote down, this seems kind of silly, but I said it was something I wanted. And they were all challenging. That's so interesting. I feel like it needs to be said because when you're trying to go after a big goal, sometimes the reason we don't hit it is because maybe our desire isn't actually deep enough, right? There has to be a compelling reason to begin something. You have to really, really want it. And so this is something to think about. Like, do you want that thing that you're after? Because if you want it bad enough, nothing is going to stop you. You will be resilient. You will be committed. You'll stick to it. You'll be willing to go after it for years and years and years. You'll be willing to handle any failure that heads your way, any mishap, any obstacle. You'll just keep going. So ask yourself, do you want that thing really badly or just mildly? Because if it's just mildly and it's a pretty audacious goal, then you probably won't get there. And maybe what you need to do is tap into something that you really want, is to increase the desire. All right. I hope this was helpful for you. Those were my insights that I journaled on. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about the story in your head, the dream that you're chasing, the thing you want really bad. And if you're trying to figure out how can I get there? Why am I not getting there fast enough? Maybe some of these insights have been helpful for you. Are you putting intention? Are you directing your mind? Are you doing things that are slowly moving you forwards? Do you believe deep down in your heart? Are you deeply convicted? Do you know that that goal that you're after is one day going to happen? Was there a decisive moment that you have made, an action that started things off? Have you begun the process? Are you feeling fear? Is this new territory? Then you're in the right place. Are you bumping up against obstacles? Good, you're supposed to. Are you disciplined? Are you willing to go the distance no matter what? And is it something you deeply, deeply want? Ask yourself these questions and then chase after your dream and go manifest. Today's show notes can be found at mydigitalfarmer.com/245. If you liked this episode and you want to share it with a friend or a farmer, please swipe the URL link, send it to someone you know, text it to them and say, you've got to listen to this episode. You've got to start following this podcast. I'm trying to get as many people as possible to know about this resource so that we as farmers collectively can be supporting one another and learning this skill of how to sell. Don't forget, you can get onto my email list by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. You can subscribe to the podcast, and you can also check out Farm Marketing School at mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS. It would be awesome to have you join my community. Have a wonderful day today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.